A few stories are straight out of misery, and they're much more unnerving when the killer is somebody you know all around well and trust around your kids. This was the situation of little Sandra Cantu, a little youngster who lived in the little local area of Tracy, California, nearly 70 miles south of Sacramento. She was grabbed straight off the road and made to get through horrendous things. Then her body was full in a bag and unloaded in a stream. However, the guilty party was not somebody you would expect. She was 28 years of age. She was a neighbor. Furthermore, a companion of the Cantu family, and she showed Sunday school at the nearby church. Her conduct puzzled the police, the local area, and even herself. For what reason did Melissa Huckabee carry out such a horrifying homicide, and what was the trigger behind it? We'll break down the entire story in this video. We should make a plunge on Walk 8, 2001. A young lady was brought into the world to a blissful family in Tracy, California. Her name was Sandra Renee Cantu, and she lived with her mother, Maria, her grandparents, and her 3 more established kin in a trailer park. Sandra was a exceptionally enthusiastic and garrulous young lady, and would begin a discussion with essentially anybody she would go over, on the grounds that she resided in a trailer park. She was accustomed to going this way and that to different companions' places there, and her mother realized she could believe the local area, as there were bunches of kids there. As a matter of fact, Melissa Huckabee had a girl herself considerably more youthful than Sandra, and they resided in exactly the same trailer park as Sandra and her family. There's a much creepier side to this. Melissa's girl and Sandra were companions. Melissa grew up in La Habra and Brea, where she went to Brea Alinda Secondary School. Then she moved a great deal, residing for some time in La Palma, and afterward moving to Tracy to Plantation Domains Trailer Park. Melissa resided there with her little girl and grandparents. Her granddad was a minister at the congregation she educated at, and a confided-in figure of the manufactured house local area in Tracy. However, her granddad's caring and giving nature wasn't sufficient to raise Melissa into a mindful grown-up L. Through her life, Melissa was determined to have marginal behavioral condition bipolar turmoil. Furthermore, schizophrenia. During one of her episodes of psychosis, Melissa would become uninformed about the things she was doing. More often than not, she would incur torment for herself. She had been taking medicine to smother her frightful eruptions, which had been pervasive for all her young and grown-up years. It seemed like the pills were beginning to produce results, and Melissa was improving anyway. Nobody realized that she was concealing a more profound, hazier urge inside what everybody saw was the modest, however, well-disposed Sunday teacher. On Friday, Walk 27, 2009, Sandra went to a companion's home after school. Then, at that point, got back home to check in. At around 4 p.m. she told her mother she was going to one more companion's home to play, yet something was off. Well, she didn't get back home for supper. She didn't get regularly. Sandra wouldn't remain out longer than a little while. So, at around 7 o'clock, Maria was getting stressed. First, she called every one of Sandra's companions to inquire as to whether she was there. However, everybody said they hadn't seen her since school hours. Then, she looked through the trailer park, thinking perhaps Sandra got lost around the parcel, yet she was no place to be found. At this point, Maria realized she ought to have called the police before. Yet, how could she should realize what befell her girl at that very time? At 7:53 p.m., the nearby police got a call about a missing young lady in Tracy. The police showed up rapidly and continued to converse with everybody in the trailer park, yet nobody had some awareness of Sandra's whereabouts. So the police took to the surveillance cameras recording on the one nearest to Sandra's home. They could plainly see Sandra heading back home. Then, at that point, taking a different path. Unexpectedly, 8 minutes after the fact, a neighbor's SUV passes by. It seems like this recording was a focal piece of the examination. However, it wasn't sufficiently to get a decent impression of the hijacker. As a matter of fact, the police spent quite a while searching for a male matured somewhere in the range of 25 and 40 with a criminal history, including under 18s. Maybe amazingly, there were a considerable amount of men who fit the profile in the area, and the decision out cycle would be a troublesome one, and this confusion didn't simply have a place with the nearby police in Tracy, yet to the actual FBI, whose help was mentioned later. The nearby cops couldn't reach any resolution upon the arrival of Sandra's vanishing. The FBI brought canines, equestrian groups modifying vehicles, and a helicopter from the California Parkway Watch to a town of only 80 occupants. Even proficient jumpers were gotten to look through the waterways anyway. The waters were truly cloudy, and they couldn't see anything all through the few days of walk, 28th and 29, that the police made every effort to search for Sandra, as the police hit a brick wall and eloped frantic they went to the media. The surveillance camera film was displayed on television, and a $22,000 reward was presented for any data looking into it. Many workers came to the area to help, and road obstructions were good to go up around Tracy, yet regardless of how much assistance they got from the public, the police continued to get every one of some unacceptable suspects. First, they thought about Sandra's father. Daniel and Maria were going through a troublesome separation. Clearly they had kid support installment issues, and there was steady battling between them. On the point, the police thought perhaps Daniel had seized Sandra to get back at Maria. After a discussion with Daniel, the police precluded him as a suspect. The following suspect, anyway, was a more established man in his late 60s at the time, who had been seen kissing Sandra on the lips 2 years before at a neighborhood pool at the hour of the episode. Sandra's auntie detailed this to the police. Yet again, the FBI conversed with the man, and despite the fact that what he had completed 2 years back was certainly report commendable for this situation, he was guiltless. Evidently he admitted that he had kissed her, yet said it was simply innocuous friendship. The police proceeded to make sense of for him that this is a lot of not innocuous fondness, and that it's really a criminal offense. The man said that he generally had a fascination toward under 18, so albeit this was a major warning for anybody. The police saw no association between the man and the genuine case. They chose to let him go. However, watch out for him for the next weeks. Police were by and large confident about finding Sandra. The Plantate Ion Domains trailer park was known to be a family accommodating safe spot. The public community for absent and took advantage of youngsters. Leader Ernie Allen even talked on the news and said the uplifting news is while few individuals accept it, most return home without a scratch. Ernie was talking about the 58 kids who are accounted for missing consistently in the US. This wasn't true for Sandra. However, reality would get a lot hazier. The police continued to declare a 5-0 compensation for finding Sandra. 230 expert hunt and salvage volunteers had come from 16 unique government elements to help find the young lady. They went from one house to another and addressed everybody they ran over. However, the lawbreaker was going unnoticed without really trying. Upon the arrival of the grabbing, Melissa informed Maria. The accompanying let the police know that I had something taken today at around 4 p.m. I couldn't say whether that has an effect or not. As a matter of fact, she had revealed this taken item to the police herself. She was discussing her Eddie Boa bag, which was subsequently found containing Sandra's body, and it gets much more peculiar the next day during the vigil for Sandra. Melissa moved toward the FBI specialist, crazy and hyperventilating, to say she had found a note. It was a torn page from a lined notepad, which read an incorrectly spelled message: Can 2, secured in taken bag tossed in water on Bachety Street and White Hill Street. Witness: what was Melissa playing at? Did she need to receive? Got such a message was certainly upsetting to the cops perusing it. Not to say the incorrect spelling appeared to be not entirely okay and far-fetched. I don't mean simply broad terry blue spelling. I mean like the word on was spelt with 2 finishes, who as a matter of fact Feels that on is felt with two finishes, not a great reason behind this weird note. The police were still distant from arriving at reality. They thought the one who apparently experienced mental issues had directed the frightening note just to include herself for the situation and stand out as a matter of fact. The police addressed Melissa regarding where she was at the time. Sandra vanished. Melissa certainly answered that she was at the congregation where she filled in as an educator, and she was refurbishing her study hall. The police didn't remember to actually take a look at the congregation. For proof, all things considered, the police couldn't imagine that a young lady who worked at the congregation could perpetrate such a terrible wrongdoing. That was until April 6, when a bag was found by ranch laborers during a routine depleting of a water system lake. Inside the bag was the body of a little kid. She was taken to the province mortuary and distinguished that night as Sandra Cantu. Her family was crushed. Nothing could bring her back, except for they actually needed to know reality behind the wrongdoing, who had gotten it done, and why. After the disclosure, specialists started investigating Melissa's odd conduct. FBI specialist Michael Conrad affirmed a few months after the fact in the stupendous jury, it was uncommon that a lady who detailed losing a bag ought to be the one lady out of everybody in this mind-boggling who ought to end up finding a note that reports that a taken bag was utilized to conceal the youngster's body. The police at long last sorted the two out, and they hurried to Melissa's home. With a court order inside, they found a journal that read charming yet psycho things will level out on its cover. On its lined pages, the police found notes matching the letters from the note Melissa had given the police a couple of days back. Despite the fact that she had taken a stab at camouflaging her penmanship, she didn't do a generally excellent work. A portion of the letters were composed the very same way in the two occasions, as though the proof wasn't sufficient. Currently a resigned U.S. Marine and his better half answered to the police that they had spotted Melissa and her SUV at the water system lake, where Sandra's body was found. At the opportunity, Melissa had let the man know that she needed to pee genuine fast. When he saw her, it didn't appear to be that peculiar basically, until Sandra's body was recuperated from that precise spot. Now the police could at last comprehend the surveillance camera film, the SUV that drives the other way that Sandra was strolling only a couple of moments before was without a doubt Melissa's. Another observation camera shows Melissa's SUV heading out from the congregation about 90 minutes some other time. When the police got to Melissa's home, they found all the proof they required, yet they didn't find her. She was in that frame of mind after she had endeavored to end her own life. There was just something single passed on to do: get to the medical clinic and capture her anyway. Before the police arrived, the medical clinic released her. However, despite the fact that it seemed like Melissa attempted to end her own life to keep away from the results of her activities, not long after the release she went to the police voluntarily. She gave a kind of indirect misleading admission where Sandra and her girl were playing find the stowaway, and there was a mishap. This would be one of the numerous choices Melissa made that confused cops and individuals following the case. It would likewise be the start of a long and difficult course of figuring out every one of the shocking subtleties of the horrendous wrongdoing. On that portentous evening, Sandra had really gone to her companion's home just to figure out her companion wasn't home. As she was getting back, Melissa welcomed her into her vehicle and persuaded her to come to chapel with her, the congregation where Sandra would see Melissa consistently. She likely knew pretty much everything there is to know about the congregation and knew when and where there would be nobody to see them, despite the fact that she was experiencing a crazy episode at the time. Melissa was cold and determined to the point of trying not to cause to notice herself. Melissa harmed the young lady with alprazolam, which was concealed in a beverage. She gave her alprazolam, is a strong medication used to treat tension. Whenever she was taken out, she attacked her with a moving pin and choked her with a noose made from old dress. It's obscure whether Sandra had the solidarity to shout for help and nobody heard her, or on the other hand, in the event that she was excessively taken out to do so, however, when inside the congregation nobody could hear what was happening. Inside 30 minutes, Melissa stuffed Sandra's body in the bag, which she had previously detailed, headed to the water system. Lake through the bag misled the resigned U.S. Marine and drove back to chapel on April 9. FBI specialists looked through the congregation, and in the kitchen they found a moving pin with a ridiculous smear on it, tried positive for Sandra's DNA, and at Melissa's home and in her handbag there were many containers of alperizolium, far more detestable. It seemed like the homicide was planned. The police took a gander at Melissa's web search history and found an article, A Secret His Granddaughters, about a man body in a bag. The following day Melissa was captured and accused of the homicide of Cantu. However, the enduring of Sandra's family was a long way from being done. You ended the existence of a blameless young lady. She wasn't even mature enough to choose to eat frozen yogurt yet. Melissa couldn't settle on what to let police know when she was captured. Whenever she first was addressed, she said that Sandra and her girl were playing a round of Find the Stowaway when Sandra concealed in the bag, which was in Melissa's home. Melissa probably failed to remember that there was a kid in the bag and she locked it. Then Sandra choked out when Melissa found her. It was past the point of no return, so she, terrified and chosen to dump her in the water system lake anyway. How the body was full in the bag made it clear to the police that there was absolutely not a chance Sandra might have slithered in there. Readily, Melissa's story would change a couple of additional times before she would vanish too. General Society, at first appointed authority Linda Loftus, gave a gag request forestalling legal counselors and any gatherings engaged with the case from remarking freely. This was to conceal a portion of the grisly insights regarding Sandra's demise. Yet this choice safeguarded not just Sandra's family, however, Melissa too, from being accused of what she merited. Soon after Sandra's body was found, Melissa had a go at ending her own life by gulping 3 sharp edges. This was the point at which her ex petitioned for care of their little girl. The preliminary for Melissa Huckabee was long and loaded up with keeping data. On April 14th, Melissa had her most memorable court appearance. She showed up with marks on her brow, which she had caused for herself that morning. She was accused of taking, disregarding and killing Sandra, she cried. All through her entire appearance on June 12th, Melissa held her request, during which she mournfully apologized to Sandra's family. An extraordinary arrangement. She was sweet in this young lady. Don't have the right to have such a short life. Capable, justifiable. Something actually wasn't correct. Despite the fact that Melissa confessed to killing Sandra, she denied attacking her ahead of time. I shouldn't have taken her, Melissa proceeded to say. She can't comprehend the reason why she did what she did, and that this is an inquiry she would battle with until the end of her life. This request was a piece of the arrangement that eliminated the chance of Melissa getting capital punishment, since she simply confessed to the exceptional situation of homicide. Throughout her capturing, the punishment must be existence without any chance to appeal, albeit likely anybody would pick life in jail over capital punishment. Melissa would appear to not like to experience her self-hurt. Episodes would be increasingly regular, and that's just the beginning, and more savage. On August 12th AD, Elegate saw Melissa sitting close to her bed with a garbage bin. He asked her what was off base. What's more, she basically let him know, I took pills. Then she got mixed up and passed out. She was promptly taken by emergency vehicle for treatment, and they eliminated from her framework various pills sufficiently huge to end her life. On August 17th, she was found taking cover behind the sleeping pad in her phone, with a sweeping tied around her neck. Following the episode, she was held under severe observation in prison. Without bail, she would not eat and did all she could to keep away from him. Her trials. Yet, the head prosecutor had requested that the adjudicator request Melissa to go to all her trials throughout the late spring of 2009. Many individuals approached with additional proof, sentencing Melissa first there. was proof of Melissa tranquilizing two others with hostile to nervousness drugs. Laura Polk, a mother who resided in a similar trailer park, portrayed an episode which she had answered to the police in January that year. Her girl got back one day in an extremely odd express. The young lady's 18-year-old sister depicted this to ABC News. Her discourse was slurred, like she had a genuinely horrendous drawl, and she would cry a ton. Like something was off with her. She was unable to stand up without assistance. She was unable to walk each time she attempted to walk. She would fall very stressed. The mother, a more established little girl, took the young lady to the medical clinic. The specialist tried the young lady's blood and saw that she had solid muscle relaxants in her framework. Her more seasoned sister let the news know that the demise of Sandra probably won't have occurred, assuming the analysts had treated her sister's case more in a serious way at that point, and she may be there as soon as humanly possible. Was another case, including Melissa, which the police didn't look sufficiently into. On Walk 3rd, that very year, Melissa gave an unknown kind of medication to a Hayward man named Daniel Cultivator. That very day, the man was captured for driving impaired. Anyway, he was never charged. He had been tranquilized without his insight, the same way Melissa sedated her two different casualties by concealing alprazolam in food or beverages, and the allegations were not finished at this point. Melissa was an individual of interest in regards to two illegal conflagrates lived in 2007. Sadly, the Tracy Police Division advised La Palma cops to keep up with the gag request and to stay silent about anything Melissa had done. In the past, La Palma police informed Tracy cops about Melissa's records furtively, and subtleties are as yet not known to the general population. By August 2009, Sandra's dissection results, alongside different records of medicating and imperiling kids, were sufficient to arraign Melissa on charges connecting with what happened to Sandra Cantu. The court additionally dropped the solicitation from Melissa's legal counselors to uncover Sandra's body. Briefly, dissection public protector Peter Fox told the San Francisco Narrative, "The significant examples were saved. It won't be important to upset the kid's remaining parts. According to a human perspective, surely it's ideal to not need to do that anyway, even with all the obvious proof added to the case." Melissa's sentence remained life in jail without any chance to appeal, as she confessed to murder and seizing with upgrades in June 2010, over a year after Sandra's demise. The appointed authority lifted the gag request off the case and permitted every one of the terrible subtleties of the wrongdoing to be known to the wide open. A few news sources had requested to have the subtleties delivered, be it from Wanted for Equity or over-the-top nosiness. Sandra Cantu's currently realized in the entirety of its score sickened the California local area and numerous different Americans who read the news. Everybody was confused with respect to why a Sunday teacher proceeded to do such deplorable violations against a young lady who was her own girl's companion. In the fallout of the gag request, huge number of pages of recently fixed records were delivered. Now specialists and clinicians could dissect these and propose hypotheses for Melissa's way of behaving and thought process. The rationale that analysts settled on was, in short, an endeavor to stand out to herself. So what is the more drawn-out clarification behind this kind of conduct? Has a name, Munchausen, as a substitute condition. It is a sadly regular type of youngster misuse, where an individual damages another person for consideration. As a matter of fact, conceivable. Melissa's most memorable casualty was her own girl, who had a background marked by being debilitated and in the medical clinic basically all the time. Representative head prosecutor talked about Melissa's set of experiences of emotional wellness issues connecting to the 2009 homicide. There were 20 or so times that Melissa got herself set fires or obnoxiously or mentally went after another person. For example, a flatmate, and there was something to that effect happening here after the homicide, where she needed to be the focal point of contact. iteration knowing this all her weird hints with the police calls, and the note begin checking out. We should rewind. First, she calls the police to let them know that she has lost her bag, portraying it exhaustively including its image and variety. Then she texts Sandra's mother, drawing in additional consideration regarding her claim case. At last she gave the police a note she, at the end of the day, had composed. With the area of the body, I keep thinking about whether she needed to be the person who settled the case. By finding the note, to be sure, the police have pondered Melissa's rationale long after the capture. The Tracy Police Division denied misusing the case, yet conceded that they thought it was basically impossible that a lady could do such things. This was the principal reason the examination endured for such a long time, when the proof was in a real sense before their eyes. Is there an illustration we ought to draw from this story? Well, activity alert around your neighbors, particularly assuming you have messes with. It's an unusual world out there, and individuals with serious mental issues seldom even realize they have them. And in the event that they do, they don't necessarily control all them. This is the finish of the present video. What is your take of this case? Should Melissa have gotten capital punishment? Tell us your considerations in the remarks segment, and in the event that you'd like more blood-chilling stories conveyed directly to your feed, remember to stir things up around town, button, and buy into our feed.